What is up, friends? Rob here, the Medicare Minister, and I'm back with a brand new Spitting Fire Leadership podcast for all of you today. And today I have the one and only Ryan Thogmartin. Ryan, will you say hey to everyone just real quickly?
Hey, what's up, everybody? Thanks for having me on, Rob. This is awesome.
Absolutely. And I'm so excited that you're with us and that you're being so generous with your time today. And for all of you that are watching, before we dive into Ryan's story and some of the spitting fire that he's going to share with us today, I want to remind all of you to please like, comment, subscribe, turn on your notifications. That way you're alerted every time we drop fresh content like this, because we do this because I believe that God has called all of you to be a leader. And I want you to see that. And I pray that what Ryan shares today will put fresh wind in your sails to push you one more day to bet on yourself and to go after your dreams and your goals. So Ryan, once again, welcome to the Spitting Fire podcast, my man.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Rob. This is exciting. I love the opportunity to share and give some of my story, but impact others. I believe that is why I was placed on this planet, is to have positive impact in all facets. So I'm super stoked to be here.
Absolutely, man. You're already spitting fire early. I love that. I love that, making an impact. And so what I always like to do in the beginning, Ryan, is just maybe get a little bit of background. Can you give us what I would call that Sports Center highlight version of your life, maybe a little bit of your background, where you're from, a little bit of the transition period, all the way up to where you're at and what you're doing today?
Awesome. So I would define myself as an entrepreneur, period. There you go. I'm an entrepreneur. The opportunities that God has put in my path, where he has allowed me to create, have taken a different course than, you kind of see the shoes behind me and a little bit of the dress. So I'll get to that in a second, but you would not be able to guess the profession that I kind of live and breathe in based on all of this. So I grew up in a really tiny, small town, little country church, small family. Dad was a associate pastor of a church, and I grew up in faith. I can applaud my parents for introducing me to Jesus. That is the greatest gift that they ever gave me was that introduction that's really dictated a lot of the path of my life. So entrepreneur, graduated high school. My dad was in education as well. So college was this expectation. There was no conversation about entrepreneurship. If someone would have told me at 12 that I could have punted school, did whatever I wanted, and been successful, well, my life would have been completely different than the path that it took. But so went to college. But prior to college, right after I graduated high school, founded a company with another guy. We built sports websites for high schools. Early 2001. Seems kind of crazy now. Most K-12 schools did not have sports websites where they could highlight athletes. We built that. I sold advertising, really honed my gift of the door-to-door small business, getting small business engaged in their first digital marketing through website advertisement and banner ads. So that was great. Went to college, ran the company from my dorm room, managed salespeople, dropped out after my freshman year. And I said, man, like, God's got me on a different path. I love what I'm doing. I feel like I'm being prepped to work for somebody, and that just didn't map to my DNA. I could take you back to the age of 11 and pinpoint when it was that I said, yeah, I'm a little bit different. I'm wired different. I don't like this job thing, doesn't make sense to me. So I'm very blessed there. Sold the company 3 years later, was ready to get married. And this is a great story. My now wife, she was my girlfriend at the time. We were talking about marriage, and she says, look, man, like, I know you just sold your company and things are good, but my dad's never going to say yes unless you've got some sort of income. Right. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, makes sense. I can respect that. And I said, well, I'm not going to go work for somebody if that's what you're thinking. She goes, well, until you figure it out, why don't you go work for my dad? He needs a salesperson. You can do sales. It'll give you the freedom to kind of figure out what comes next. And I didn't totally hate the idea. And I said, okay, what does your dad do? And she said, my dad has a vault company. Now, when I say vault, you and everybody else listening probably thinks bank vault. That's exactly what I thought. All right, great. didn't ask any more questions. I'm like, bank vaults. Every bank needs one. People have small ones in their house. Piece of cake. This would be easy. Show up for this interview, read the sign on the concrete plant, and it says concrete burial vaults. I walked in, asked where they made the bank vaults, and the guy in the office was like, "Nah, man, we make burial vaults." I'm like, "What the heck is that?" And so I got duped into working in the death care space by going to work for my father-in-law. But it was one of the best decisions that I ever made. I got to see how to operate a business with a large client base, operate a business with a large staff, and just kind of get different perspective than how I had managed a very small 3 to 4 person team with the company that I'd sold. And it gave me great perspective, but it also created opportunity. Me as a creator and entrepreneur immediately started looking for where the holes were in the death care space. I had relationship and called on about 120 funeral homes on behalf of my father-in-law's business. There was a commonality between the conversations I was having. What I knew about marketing and advertising, I'm going, okay, the problem funeral homes have connecting with the consumer can be solved by this problem. Or this solution. If we can bridge the gap, create information, bring people together, everybody wins. I started blogging about the ideas that I had. That morphed into what is now the largest online funeral publication in the world, connectingdirectors.com. So I created this platform, got a lot of exposure very quickly. There's now 40,000 funeral professionals across the US that read that publication on a weekly basis. And it's became this platform where I had exposure. And the marketing stance is where I kind of planted my flag, and I would have, write about marketing, and I got other people to write about other parts of the profession. And that led to me consulting for funeral homes around marketing. That led to speaking opportunities within the death care space, which eventually led me to launch a social media agency called Disrupt Media. Left in 2012, the Vault Company launched that brand. And we are now the largest provider of social media services to funeral homes. We are a relationship marketing company. We help funeral homes create relationship through organic, real, transparent content, because 80% of people, when they hear the word funeral home, funeral director, think of something negative. That's a huge stereotype. So we've got a team of 27 spread out now all over the country. We have headquarters in Zanesville, Ohio. I live in Scottsdale, Arizona. Just moved here with my family a few months ago. And man, I feel like God has created me. The purpose, like I said earlier, was impact, whether that's through social media. And now I've become a life coach and personal development coach. That is insane fulfillment. Just the way you can communicate with people, and personal development has had a massive, completely. I mean, we could do a whole nother podcast on that, and what it's created in my life, and what God's brought me through, and what God's revealed to me through personal development of my purpose and why I was created. And man, when you can define that, and your will and God's will align, it's like that freight train that it doesn't matter what you attach to it, nothing's going to stop it. And I really feel like God's brought me to that point. So I think that was a little longer than like the elevator pitch, but wanted to give you perspective that I don't fit the part of somebody in death care, which has been why we've had so much success, really breaking the mold of what somebody would expect in death care, and the authenticity. Like, this is who I am. I've had the opportunity to do consulting and coaching with publicly traded companies in the death care space. And when I show up to a board meeting with a bunch of suits, this is what you get. And you're either going to like it or you're going to hate it. And there's no really middle ground. But I believe that with leadership, authenticity is one of the most valuable components of leadership, period. Yeah. So I've really been fortunate to be able to hang my hat on the authenticity of who I am, and really break a lot of stereotypes and bust through molds to where now it works in my advantage, where 5 years ago, 6 years ago, looking different was a lot harder than it is now. But when you can stay consistent and you can be authentic, and your message doesn't change, and what you preach doesn't change, and you live it and you breathe it, whether you're leading people or you're leading clients, or you're creating a brand, authenticity across the board is going to win every single time. And I believe that true authenticity, even if it's going to lose you the deal, is more valuable than not being authentic and getting.
Oh, that's good, man. No, we could end it right there. That's probably a $10,000 masterclass right there, man. I'm looking for the choir, man. You're preaching, taking us to the Spitting Fire Church. But no, I agree. So there's a lot to unpack there. And I love doing the podcast because I don't have a script per se. And I love some of the nuggets you were dropping. I actually listened to another podcast you did, and there was a quote there, and I wrote it down on my notes. And I want to stay there with authenticity. Okay. And because I'm a firm believer, man, I'm okay with not being everyone's flavor. I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? And I love what you're saying. You said, if I'm authentic to who I am, it's going to create waves.
Yeah, I believe that.
Go ahead.
Go for it.
Go ahead, brother.
I fully believe that. I believe that when you're authentic to who you are and who God created you to be, you have a purpose. Every single one of us has an insane purpose. I have a skill set. You have a skill set. We possess things that nobody else on the planet possesses. Yep. God put those in us for a specific reason, and we can live true and authentic into that. God created us to make waves. God created us to have purpose. I love Deuteronomy 28, 1-14. It's the blessing. Like, God wants us to be successful and bless every part of our life.
Come on.
But when we can tap into that, and we can tap into the authenticity of who he created us to be, we absolutely will make waves, because that's how he designed us. So it's more biblical and a revelation that I've had versus really anything else.
No, and I love that, and would you agree that so many people settle for a version of themselves that people want them to be? Do you see that as a coach?
Every day. Yeah. Every day we make decisions that lend it to be more comfortable. So if people see us in a certain way and want us to be a certain way, it's a whole lot more comfortable to be that way. And we make sacrifices in our life and we miss out on things. I see it. I'm not perfect. I've made those same mistakes. So I've seen it historically in my life, where I've taken what was easy versus what God put in my path. And God never promised us it would be easy, right? Sure. God never said, go this way, pick up your cross and follow me. It's going to be easy. That verse didn't come next. God doesn't promise easy, but when we do the work, and that's what I love about personal development. I think the Bible is the greatest personal development book ever written. When you look at relational things and you look at personal development, you look at mindset, like, God addresses those things, different language, but he addresses those things heavy throughout the Bible. And I really, really firmly believe that when we're working in the will of God, things aren't going to be easy. We're gonna face things that are insanely difficult, but the blessing is on the other side of the boldness to punch through it. And I've seen that duplicated over and over in my life. But yes, I think that one of the things that trips us up as humans and what holds us back is the level of comfort that we have conforming to what somebody wants us to be. Look, I probably would have had more success short term in the beginning of launching my company if I put on the suit, took the earrings out, took off the jewelry, clean shaven, and walked into funeral homes looking the same as every other salesperson that walked in. I would have got more respect off the bat. Sure. I was willing to sacrifice short-term gain for a very long-term play. Now, if I walked in with a suit, man, they're going to kick me right out the door. They call me and they hire our brand because they want different. They need different. They got to disrupt. So I think that we absolutely make decisions that keep us from accelerating, keep us from growth by going, man, it's so much easier just to step in over here and fit in than it is to be authentic. And it's one of the conversations we have with our daughters. all the time is you are going to be faced with opportunities every single day to be just like everybody else. But God never intended and never created you to be just like everybody else.
Yeah. No, I was sitting here thinking as you were talking that way of a scripture in the book of Proverbs, and the chapters actually is eluding me in my mind at this point. But King Solomon wrote that many are the plans of our hearts, but the Lord's purpose prevails. And as I was thinking that when we can take that authenticity and it be in alignment with God's purpose for our life, man, we become supernatural effective.
Yeah, that's it.
And so I was thinking as you were talking about that so many times we chase lesser plans instead of God plans. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And even in my own life, I've seen where I've been somewhat effective, but then I look back and I go, God, man, if I would have just been the most authentic version of myself, if I would have just aligned that with your purpose and will for my life, man, I would have been like next level effective, right? Next level success, making next level impact. So I definitely love what you're saying there and what you're bringing to the table, because I know for myself, I have never had a problem being unique. But I think like any of us, as I raised my hand earlier, that we tend to let the opinions of others, we tend to let family, we tend to let our environment sometimes dilute that. And the reality is, this, if we are not every day becoming the most genuine version of ourselves, there's this incongruency thing happening. Yes. Right. And we'll never be as effective until we're congruent, until we're in that alignment, as you said. So I really appreciate you sharing that.
Amen.
And so let me ask you this, because obviously I knew you were a person of faith before you came on. I've heard you say, talk about God and the Bible, but tell us how important your faith is, not only in your personal life, but also in your business life as well.
It's everything. And look, it hasn't always been everything. I was raised in church. It's what we did. There was no debate on whether we were going to church on Sunday morning. It was just it.
Same.
And up until 11 years ago, I would have told you that I didn't have a testimony, that I grew up in church. I never had this come to Jesus moment. I listened to all these people and mentors talk about, when they got saved and when they raised their hand and went to that altar call. Yeah. I'm like, I don't know. It's not been that exciting, man. It was what we did it to. And so 11 years ago, this past August, I was in a head-on car crash. Girl went left to center, texting while driving, killed her passenger. And I broke my right femur in 3 places. And it was a period in my life where, as an entrepreneur, we tend to shoulder everything, and I don't need anybody. I can do it on my own. I can bust through. And I said that about everyone. And I said that about God too. It wasn't that I didn't need God. It was like, God, I got it. I'll figure this out. I'll call your name when I need you. But until then, quit messing with my heart. Let me do my thing. And I was just a lot of bad patterns and a lot of bad habits. I wasn't doing anything crazy and illegal. I still loved my wife, but our relationships and all of my relationships in the business wasn't what it could have been had I let God be God. Right. Mm-hmm. And I remember, my SUV is flipping over, and it was like this slow motion. I can tell you it was 12:41 was what time it was in the afternoon on the clock. And I land in the cutout of where the sunroof was. And I immediately was like, it was like surrender. I was like, all right, I get it, God. Like you're in control. And when I was able to surrender, and it, things in my life still, I had that moment, but you know how we ride the wave and then we go back to patterns, right? Without the right decisions and the right action, transformation is never going to happen. We can have all the knowledge in the world, but it takes decisions and action to create transformation. I had the knowledge, I didn't make the decisions, and I didn't take the action. So transformation didn't happen yet. Things got progressively worse in my life. And it wasn't until I fully surrendered on my face saying, all right, God, I've been doing it my way and I've had some success, but it's gotten me to the lowest point in my life. Right. All right. Let's let's do it your way. Why that was the last thing that I came to versus the first. Had I made that decision years ago, things could have been infinitely different. But that was, I said, I always say, like, be careful what you ask God for, you're going to get it. And
right.
I kept saying, I don't have a testimony yet. I know I grew up in church, and I didn't realize I wasn't developed enough in myself and my faith to understand that was an insane testimony already.
Sure.
And God said, okay, here, let me give you a testimony. Let me bring you back to me. Let me recenter you. Let me recalibrate all of your thoughts on relationship, business, success, all the things. Let me realign you. And the beautiful thing about God, and there's a great book, and I'm going to grab it. Sorry.
Yeah,
and I hope you're okay
do.
with me doing this.
Yeah, do it, man. Do it.
Creating Your Best Life. My life coach, that man is the single person that's had the biggest impact on my life, co-wrote this book. And in the book, they talk about being a co-creator. The beautiful thing about God is that he gives us the keys to the kingdom, and he wants blessing for our life. He's created us for a purpose. And when we align in that purpose and his will, everything is possible. But God allows us to be a co-creator. He's a God of choice. Like we get to make our own choices in our life. And there's a right choice and there's a wrong choice.
Sure.
And things are going to be a lot easier when we make the right choice, but God's a God of freedom, and he allows us to make choices, and we can absolutely co-create our life. Like, God's got a plan, and he allows us to make the choices that align with that, where we're in control. He gives us the keys, and he's there with us in the passenger seat. And there's sometimes where we need him to grab the wheel, and he does, but he gives us the freedom to make choices. And I think that is something that I didn't really learn in church growing up. I learned about a lot of rules, and I got to follow this and do this and do this.
Right.
God said, love, just love. They will know me by the way that you love them. And man, he gives us the opportunity to love people the way that we want. He gives us the opportunity to make choices that dictate our path. And the time of my life where I was the most stuck was when I quit moving. And I wasn't making choices, and I was fully relying on God to make choices for me. And I don't think he aligns us as a co-creator to fully rely on him to make the choice. And what I mean, and I think you listened to the podcast maybe that I was on with Doug, and I talked about my wife and I for 3 years knew that God was calling us to something more, and that we needed to leave where we were living and we needed to go. And we prayed for 3 years. All right, God, we're ready. We're ready. Tell us where we need to go. And we just kicked back, and we waited, and we prayed, and we prayed, and we prayed, and we prayed. And it was finally when we started to go, all right, God, we're just going to go. We're going to go here. We really love it here. And we're just going to do this. I hope you're in this with us. We know you're calling us, but we don't know where. It wasn't until we started stepping that God started directing. And, he gave me this vision of, like, if someone poured 2 buckets of concrete and I stepped in each bucket and that concrete hardened, like, when my feet are in concrete, I can't take a step. And if my feet aren't moving, God can't direct. And so through the movement, now God can direct our feet. God can, and he's not going to, I had a mentor say to me through this, I was kind of talking through this with them, and I said, God will give you a glimpse of the kingdom. Like, I can see visions of what life could be like, and the massive impact that I can have and my family can have, that God's called us to. But the plan isn't there. Like, each step of the way hasn't been laid out for me to where I know what that is. And what my mentor said, and it was it just resonated with me so good. He said, if God showed us everything that we would have to go through to get to the kingdom, well, we would try to skip over everything he was trying to teach us and go straight to the prize. He's like, we gotta go through it, because, and I gotta tell you, like, and you've experienced this your life, I'm sure that as we've gone through things that are hard, as we've done the suck, right? Like, we've been in the suck.
Yeah.
On the other side of it, is the blessing and the reward and the knowledge. Now we have the knowledge of going through. Had I not gone through that season, I couldn't appreciate the season here. And I wouldn't have relied on God as much as I did had I not gone through that season. That's, yes, God. When we conform and we're not authentic and we don't do the things, life's harder. That's it. Life is just harder. It's harder.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I like to say it this way, that I believe God does his best work in us in the hard seasons. Yeah. But here's the cool thing about the hard seasons. The hard seasons prepare us to be the best steward of the blessing that he's going to give us. Because like you said, we'd be like lottery winners. Hey, we got a whole bunch of money. We have all this material wealth, but we know the statistics of lottery winners that they blow it all within 5 years. They're broke. Right. They're bankrupt. Yep. I believe the same thing can happen spiritually. If God just bless, and never allowed you to go through some hard things, then you would squander it and waste it, and you wouldn't be a good steward of the blessing. So I love that. Good. And I definitely love what you're saying about the action part. As a former pastor, church planter, someone who's been in ministry for 20 years, I see a lot of people use prayer as a crutch. And God's like, okay, you've already prayed about it like 100 billion times. When are you actually going to do something about it? Right? Like you're not waiting on me. I'm waiting on you, so to speak.
Yes. Right. Oh, that's so good. That's so good. And I lived in that season for 3 years. You're exactly right.
Yeah. And I love what you said too, to go back at the beginning is every day we have to make a decision. And I tell people this, to serve the kingdom of Rob or the kingdom of God. And I've served the kingdom of Rob, and it gave me temporary success, but it left me unfulfilled. Kind of what you're saying here. But when I surrendered finally, right, when I fully surrendered and I started serving the kingdom of God, I found fulfillment like in nothing else. I tell people I stopped settling for lesser loves, right? Generic fulfillment. That's good. And I started getting the real thing, And so I love what you're saying there. Let me ask you this about faith, because you and I are, I'm an entrepreneur as well. You're an entrepreneur. I've always been a big dreamer. My wife's been on that roller coaster ride with me for 20 years. We've made a lot of money, but we've lost a lot of money. It's been scary.
Takes a special woman that does.
Yeah. Yeah. And so why do you think there are so many entrepreneurs, if you will, that struggle with coming to faith? Do you think it's a branding issue? Do you think it's a packaging issue? Do you have any thoughts on that, just real quickly?
I think that when we're wired different as entrepreneurs, right, where we don't see a way is where we want to go make a way, and a lot of times we got to shoulder that. So being an entrepreneur is insanely lonely. There's a lot of glitz and glam that you can see from the outside when you look at entrepreneurs and what they've created and how entrepreneurs have changed the world. But it is lonely. And it, when we talk about marriage and relationship, it takes a special God ordained woman to be married to an entrepreneur, or a man to be married to a woman entrepreneur. It goes both ways. You need that support system right beside you, but we tend to shoulder everything and be loners. And for me, that was it. Like I was that loner, and I was used to I'll make a way. I'll do this. If I do this, I can get that. And I didn't rely on God. And I think that it's natural to go, I'll shoulder all of it. And it almost is like weakness to call on somebody else. When God's going, man, just throw your net on the other side of the boat. If you call me, I'm going to change your life. I created you. I know exactly what you need. I know exactly what I put in you. I want to bring it out of you, but you need me to unlock it. And I think that it's just the DNA of an entrepreneur to be so single focused on one thing that it's very easy to just kind of block out the rest. And faith is part of some of that. There isn't room for the relationship, or it looks as weakness to say we need something.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think a lot of it too, what I have seen, because I grew up in church as well. I grew up in a very works-based church, and so my whole life, I thought I had to perform for God. And so when I got on my own, I just got tired of performing for God, like I was some monkey or some, trick animal. And it wasn't until later in my 20s My sister actually died in a car accident on the way to church.
Oh, wow.
And God used that very tragic moment. That was my Paul moment, if you will, right? And it sobered me up to the point that for the first time, I thought, man, there's this God that's really for me. And then God sent people into my life that begin to teach me the whole relationship thing. And I began to detox from religion. And it changed my whole life. And so I've spent the past 20 years, man, teaching people about relationship. And so I teach our agents here that every day I live in a fully loved, fully accepted posture, that all of heaven is cheering me on, that my Father's pleased with me. And so it makes me every day want to get up and live on purpose in such a way that's making a difference in the life of others. So I love what you're saying there, man. I just think, and I'm guilty of it too. I think every entrepreneur, we want to be the CEO, man. We want all the keys to the kingdom. And here comes God asking for them all. And you know this, a big struggle for me, and maybe you can speak to this a little bit real quickly, is I really struggled giving God, all those keys to the kingdom, because God does things in so many counterproductive, counterintuitive ways that we go, that doesn't make any freaking sense, God. Right. Yeah. And you want me to give you all of this? No, I think my way's been pretty successful. Have you experienced that in your journey as well?
Yeah, I have, and a number of different facets, really, in I think in every business opportunity, there's low hanging fruit that we can go grab. That's the easy. And a lot of times the low hanging fruit is big numbers and big revenue, but it doesn't lend itself to longevity and the long play. It's a quick money grab. And so, I've left a lot of things on the table that could have been big money rewards because I felt like God saying, no, we need to do it this way. We need to be different. Everybody else is going to grab the low hanging fruit. Man, I created you for the long game. You're here for the long haul. Good. And so I've experienced a lot in that. And when we give God kind of those keys and we co-create with him, man, he's going to direct us and we're going to be like, okay, why'd we do that? Come on, God. Or he's going to call us to give something that's going to stretch us. And I think that we think about those things in the back of our mind, but if we're fully living authentic and our actions are going to map to what we're saying on this,
right,
then we're going to have to follow through with what God's calling us to do, because that's the only authentic choice, because we're saying it, we got to live it. And someone's going to, we live in an environment now where you got to assume that you're on camera 24/7. So there's going to be people that listen to this and go, wait a second. I had an interaction with this bozo. And you know what? They may be right. I may not have been authentic in that moment. And we're held accountable for those things. So I think that, there's part of that where like, oh man, if we let God get in here and mess around and get all handsy on everything, we know it's going to be a blessing in the long run, but man, it's going to be weird. It's going to be uncomfortable. He's going to ask me to do things I don't want to do. But at the end of the day, again, we can go down the path where I think I can blaze this trail and it's going to be easy and it's me. And then we can go down this trail where God didn't say it's going to be easy, but the reward and the boldness, that blessing is going to be there.
Yeah. Now that's so good. Let me ask you this just real quickly in this moment. I was thinking this as you were talking. One tip for the audience that's watching today when this comes out, what is one tip you could give them that would begin their journey to find that authentic version of themselves?
Oh man, for me, this is gonna sound kind of oxymoron in the sense of, like we just said, other people's opinions don't matter. But for me, it really became the opinions of other people that helped me be more authentic. And I'll give you the scenario. So I had started that publication. I was writing content. I had thousands of people in the death care space that had followed me, but had never seen me. So for 2 years, I created content, never video. It was written. I mean, this was 2007, 8, 9. Yeah. The first video I ever put out to 5,000 subscribers of this blog was in 2009. I had a thought. And so I was at home. I was in my basement. I was me. I was in like a t-shirt, jeans, backwards hat, flipped on a webcam, recorded it, put it out, and got annihilated. Like Hundreds of people go, I can't believe we ever listened to you. You're so unprofessional. Look at the way you dress. If you came into my funeral home, I'd throw you out. And I said to my wife, at the time, I was still working for my father-in-law. When I did sales for my father-in-law for their vault company, I did the suit and the tie, and I had to play the part. When I did my own thing, I had an agreement with him. I said, look, I have struck a chord. People hate the way that I look authentic. Like, the suit and tie isn't me. I do it because that's what you require for the job. Outside of the business, your business, that isn't me. So when I'm doing my brand stuff, can I make an agreement with you that when I do me, I'll be me? When I play the game for you, I'll wear the uniform. We came to an agreement, but it was the reaction. I think motion creates emotion. So I was moving quickly in the video. I talk with my hands, which I get hammered on all the time. Like a lot of that allowed me to go, yep. I created a lot of emotion, and I created a lot of attention and a lot of momentum. And sometimes momentum doesn't come in the form of what we want it to. It isn't always a win that creates momentum. We want to duplicate momentum in wins, but a lot of time there's things that happen that can immediately look as a negative that create massive momentum. And this was that moment for me. This was a momentum shift of, this is the brand. This is who I'm going to be, authentically me. And it felt so freeing and so great that I'm like, you know what, this is it. This is who I'm going to be. And from that day forward, when I represented my brand, I never wore a suit again. Everybody has only seen me in t-shirts and ripped jeans, and I have clothes made that are all rhinestone and blinged out. And it's the brand, but it was the attention and the nerve it struck with the audience. And I'm like, if I was created to be different and I was created for a purpose, then this is the path that I have to go down. So the switch for me to be authentic was the negativity that got thrown at me by being who I actually was.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense, man. You're definitely bringing some fire. I would frame it this way for our audience. If you're watching this today, quit letting the opinions of others be a prison, but rather use it as a platform to propel you towards your purpose.
That's good.
Come on, that's a sermon series right there. I need to write that down. That's a sermon series, right? So I appreciate you sharing that. I agree. I think we can allow it to paralyze us, or we can allow the opinions of others to propel us. And so I definitely appreciate you sharing that. I think there's one other piece of nugget there, Ryan, is, and if you're watching this today, listen, if you want to be a leader that's quicker to compliment than criticize. I think so many leaders, we default to the criticism. And even if it's constructive feedback, that's okay. But I think sometimes it's hard for leaders just to compliment. And I've always led organizations this way. And I mean, you may disagree, Ryan, but I've always, just like my relationship with God, I'm glad there's no condemnation in my relationship with God through Jesus. And I think fear and condemnation are horrible motivators. And I lead my organizations with that fully loved and fully accepted. And I'm able to transfer that to other people because I myself have experienced that. And so it doesn't mean that I'm a pushover. Doesn't mean that I don't, that I'm not bold and I don't have firm talks. Because you know this as leaders, we have to have those uncomfortable talks from time to time. But what I mean is leading in such a way that empowers people, knowing that they are loved and accepted. And I have found that when people know that they're fully loved and accepted, they perform at a way higher level than if I'm just trying to motivate them out of fear or condemnation. Have you seen that in your leadership journey as well?
Oh, 1,000%. So, and I have 2 daughters. So fear and like that is not a motivator. It just shuts down the brain and the emotions, and it doesn't allow people to be who they authentically are. So I'm as a leader and CEO, I am definitely the visionary CEO. I'm operations for myself. I'm good at that. Operations, processes, handbooks. Not my thing. My wife, insanely gifted at that. We've got a great leadership team that she leads on the operations side of our business, manages our staff and the 27 people. The thing for me that I've learned is that being a loving, caring leader is exactly what you just said. It doesn't mean that you're a pushover. And so I've learned, and as a creative, rules to me feel like shackles. Like freedom is one of my core values. So obviously I've got a lot of opinion about the world today when it comes to freedom. So freedom is one of my core values.
Okay.
And when someone puts restrictions on me, I don't love it. But what I have learned as a leader is when people aren't wired the same as me, they need boundaries. Boundaries can be when boundaries come out of a place of love, and I'm putting boundaries in place because it's going to allow you to perform and succeed. It's received better. So when I begged my wife, logistically, it makes so much sense for you to run operations. Like you have the brain, the gift for it. You're telling me what I need to do. I just need you to come in and do it. When we put boundaries in place, the level of performance that we got out of our team, and boundaries aren't probably the right word in a business sense.
No.
I like the word boundaries because I don't like the word rules. Think of it as, I was running a company. We were playing football on a field that had no out of bounds. That's chaos. There's boundaries on a court or on a field because now we know how we can play the game, and it allows people to operate more intentionally and allows them to operate more efficiently. The efficiency of our team rose when we started putting boundaries in place of how we were going to treat each other, how we were going to respond to conflict, what the right process was when there was conflict. Not everybody's going to get along. So yes, I fully believe that structure as a leader, when structure is delivered as opposite of I want to hold you down by putting structure on you, and I want to love you and I want you to excel, and I'm going to put boundaries in place that allow you to do that. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I used to, when I was pastoring, I used to tell our congregation that, we tend to look at it as rules, but really these are just expressions of love from God.
Yeah.
He loves us. Right. And instead of rules, they're expressions of love. So I try to lead that way in every organization that God has ever allowed me to lead in. So definitely love what you're saying there as well. Listen, can we take a few more minutes? I know we've gone about 40 minutes. I know you're a busy guy. Got about 3 more questions.
I'm blocked off for the next 45 minutes. So
cool.
Go as long as you want.
So let me ask you this. What is one main leadership principle that you have personally learned that you really leaned into and that you lead from? Is there one staple principle? There may be many, but can you just dissect or expound on one just for the next few minutes?
Man, I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but it's authenticity. Like as a leader, I have to be authentic to who I am. So what does that mean? That means that there are opportunities for us to excel at something where it's not authentic to who I am and authentic to the brand. I'll give you a scenario.
Okay.
I speak 20 to 25 times a year on a normal year at different conferences within the death care space all over the country on marketing and social media and now personal development and leadership. If you listen to Tony Robbins can give you the science behind why he curses.
Sure.
Because it perks people's attention, and you follow it up with this. And like there's sound fundamentals for the argument to curse in a keynote or in a video. And a lot of people do it and it works brilliantly for them. Gary Vee, love Gary Vee. If Gary Vee didn't cuss like he did, it probably wouldn't resonate with as many people as it does.
Sure.
If I came out and I started cussing with the driver of getting more attention, it is going to backfire because it isn't authentic to who I am. So it's going to be unnatural. And people have already heard my faith and the authenticity in that, and it's not going to line up and it's going to work against us. So there was a scenario where, somebody on my team who I love dearly, insanely creative, said, look, I know you're against this, but if you came out and opened up your keynote by saying this, I'm like, you are 1000% correct. I would have the attention of the audience, right? It would be shock and awe, and it would probably deliver the message that I wanted to deliver on more ears. I said, but I'm not going to do it. I can't sacrifice who I am authentically and who they've seen me profess to be
Bro.
because it's going to give me more attention. I will get the attention. We will have this success, the success that's coming to us because God said it was coming, not because I did something out of character to get more attention and get there quicker. So, for me, like a leadership principle for me is definitely authenticity in all facets. And I was on a podcast with a gentleman, Michael Brody White is his name. I'm going to get the name of his book wrong, but it's something around why all great leaders act like drug dealers, and it was on authenticity. And with a drug dealer, you get what you get. Like they're authentic to who they are. Right. They're an addict, and that's it. I think it was like why great leaders lead like drug addicts or something along those lines. If you Google it, you'll find it. But it was all about the authenticity of a leader and how it is more valuable. Like I said earlier, I had a conversation with him. And I said, I believe in authenticity. I echo everything you're saying. And I rather lose a deal being authentic than get a deal by conforming to something else. And the same way, I rather lose my team being authentic to who I feel God's called me to be than conform to make everybody happy. And that's something I have to grade myself on. Like I'm the only one that can hold myself to that standard. And do I hit it every single time? Absolutely not. But can I rectify it? Can I go back and make the right change? Can I make the right decision? Yeah, absolutely. But that principle is going to be authenticity. And then I think integrity is a big word as well. And I think that aligns with authenticity. Sure. It's one of the core things that I preach to our leadership team is really integrity around being true to what we say. If I hire somebody and tell them that in 6 months you're going to get this if you do this, then it is on me to deliver on that. If I made you a promise and you delivered on your end of the deal, then I'm going to do everything in my power to deliver on my end of the deal and help you get what you want out of life. Like we're hiring people, millennials. Most of our staff are under the age of 25. And I know in a social media job like this, that's who we need to hire. This doesn't mean that it's going to be a forever place of employment. I want them to realize their hopes and their dreams while they work for us. And I challenged, my wife and I challenged our team that we have the responsibility for 27 people and we have the responsibility for hundreds of clients. Sure. If a client leaves our ecosystem or an employee leaves our ecosystem and they don't leave better than when they entered our ecosystem, we failed at our responsibility because our responsibility isn't to be a social media company. I feel like our purpose and responsibility is for positive impact, whether that's through social media, through whatever, it's the impact. So if I've got people under my ecosystem of my umbrella that I can speak life into and they leave better than when they came in, I'm fulfilling my purpose. If they leave and go, man, this guy said all this stuff and then none of that happened, and they don't leave better as a human being when they go somewhere else as when they entered, then I failed in delivering my purpose.
No. And I love that, man. The nugget to take away if you're watching this today is don't sacrifice authenticity on the altar of conformity. Let me say that again. Quit sacrificing authenticity on the altar of conformity. Because I promise you will not find fulfillment in that. Ryan's is living proof of that. I'm living proof of that. And many of you are not going to the next level because you're settling for the conformity when God's called you to the authenticity. So, man, I love that message that you're preaching. Real quickly, I ask this to everyone that comes on the podcast. I want to ask you this too. If there was one word you could use to describe yourself, what would that one word be?
Oh man, that's you got me stumped for a second. Oh man, there's a lot of words that come to mind. I mean,
just that first gut reaction, top of your head. Creator. Okay, so let me ask you this: as that having that creator or creative trait, how has that contributed to the level of success that you currently have in your life now?
Because I created I operate 5 different brands under the Disrupt umbrella in the death care space. Every single thing that we've created didn't exist prior to us creating. I didn't invent social media, right? I'm not a creator of the technology. Let me create something over top of the technology. And we created the first social media agency in death care. I created the first online blog and news publication, daily news publication in death care. We created the first dedicated job board strictly for the funeral profession, where funeral homes don't have to go use Indeed and all the other things that exist, because it was the first of its kind. So none of those are groundbreaking, like going to be applied to the world. They didn't exist in this space. And the ability to create this platform that I didn't know I was creating, that I could plug any brand into and immediately have overnight eyeballs and attention and be able to generate with it, creator. And I think that aligns with the authenticity of who I am. I like to pioneer. I think differently about things. And I think most entrepreneurs have that innate trait to be able to see things. Just sometimes people think we're a little off, but we're just looking at it differently than somebody else. So it's just a DNA trait that allows us to do that. And so I would say creator. And I don't think that I'm done creating. I think that, creating is something that we do until we take our last breath, whether that's creating a home, creating an environment for somebody, creating generosity that allows somebody to go create. I think creating is a lot of different things, and it aligns with being a co-creator of your life that's talked about in this book. God gives us the ability to create. Our thoughts have power and energy, and we can create the life that we manifest when we align with his will. So creator.
Yeah. And I don't know if you would agree with this, but I was thinking of this as you were talking. I think part of that settling, and I want to clarify what I'm going to say here. I think part of the settling, or at least for my life, is when I settled for the copying instead of being the creator. Now, I do know that, there's an old saying, don't reinvent the wheel. Hey, you want to emulate, you want to use things that other people are using. We've all done that, right? Whether it's from ClickFunnels to YouTube, whatever platforms, processes. But I think sometimes we settle for just the easy copying instead of saying, hey, God, give me the vision to create something. Would you agree with that?
I could 10x my company overnight in revenue if I took the easy road of how we do things. So we created the only strategy process for real, authentic content. Like if you think about a funeral home and content, it's kind of like a church. Like every church could get away with creating Bible quotes and inspirational posts on their Facebook, and no one would question it. But it's not going to move the dial or the needle. The same thing as with a funeral home. I could create inspirational quotes and Bible quotes and grief-related quotes and sell those to thousands of funeral homes, have 3 employees that created 30 different ones every month, and we just make money hand over fist. I could 10x my company overnight if I took that direction. And I'm not willing to sacrifice the creator to carve out a niche that's going to have long-term value over short 10x gain.
But would you say that you find more fulfillment in being the creator, the authenticity versus selling out?
100%. Like if I 10x the company, like the wealth would be great, but the greater purpose of why I exist wouldn't be fulfilled, which would unfulfill me.
Oh, that's good, man. Gosh, that's so good. You're spitting some fire at the end, man. I love it. Well, listen, as we close today, and once again, man, thank you for taking this time. I know you could be a million other places, and I'm so thankful for you.
That's where I'm supposed to be.
Tell us where we can find you. I know I can find you on Instagram and YouTube, but for our audience, tell us the best places to find Ryan.
Google Ryan Thogmartin. You'll find every social platform. I spend my most of my time inside of Facebook and Instagram. So at Ryan Thogmartin on both platforms. That's where you can find me, and you'll get a good dose of personal development content. My family, you'll get the occasional funeral video. But look, here's the deal. I say this all the time because people are like, man, you just don't come across as a funeral guy. And like, I see your content. And when it's funeral related, I'm thinking like, this applies to everything. And that's really it. Like the content that I create directed at funeral homes on how they should market could be applied to there is not a business that it could not be an applique for. And so if you sub out the word funeral home for whatever your brand or business is, personal brand or organizational, it's going to have impact, and it'll resonate and it'll make sense. Because if I can sell a funeral through Facebook ads, everything else on the planet is a piece of cake.
Sure.
So it's going to work for your brand as well.
Sure. So just so I'm clear, funeral home is the niche, right? Or niche, however you want to be more correct. But really the marketing, the authenticity that you have really you can utilize for any business that's watching this.
That's right. Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, when we content create, it's for the death care space because we got a great process and a system. But I do a lot of consulting and Facebook ad work with brands outside the death care space because the constant's the consumer. That part of it doesn't change.
Gotcha.
So yeah, all the principles and the way the platform works, all of it's the same for sure.
Gotcha. Well, once again, man, thank you for being here today. You have definitely been spitting some fire today. I know this episode, when it drops, it's going to bring tons of value and make an impact. And listen, if you're watching today, I just want to remind you again, you deserve to win.
Yes.
You have to see it for yourself. And I pray that something that Ryan said or something that we discussed today would push you towards your dreams, would push you towards your goals, and that you would finally wake up and sober up in this thing called life, and you would bet on yourself.
That's
right. You would bet on yourself, and that you would not quit, and that you would just tired of doing the same old thing that everyone else is doing, because I believe that God made you on purpose for a purpose. Once again, I want to remind you, please comment, like, subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear this word that Ryan brought today. And I just want to say, God bless you guys. Make it an awesome day. And we'll talk to you guys soon.